All right, so in this video, I thought we would go through some books featuring one of my favorite comic book artists and one of my biggest influences, Alex Toth. If you're not familiar with Alex Toth's work, chances are you're sort of indirectly familiar or inspired by his work, just because he's influenced so many various comic book artists and illustrators and animators over the years. So yeah, let's just dive into some of these books, flip through, and we can talk about Alex and some of his work. So in this book, Genius Illustrated, this is the art and life of Alex Toth. This is part of what I think is like a trilogy series. You can see how thick this hardcover is. There's two other books like this, and each one features a different category of his work, because Alex Toth was mainly known, I would assume, for his comic book work, but he also did a lot of work in the animation world. Most notably, he designed a lot of the early Hanna-Barbera characters, and he did other film work, production work, and TV work outside of comic books. So this book kind of shows his comics as well as some of that other stuff. And there's some, biography elements in here too. Even just like right here, this is just one of the end pages, but you could already get a glimpse of just that mastery of black and white. And one of the things that Alex Toth is most known for is just his simplification of design. So as you can see, he doesn't overly use a ton of lines. There's not a lot of like cross-hatching or I'm assuming what he would have thought of as unnecessary line work. Every line here is sort of there for a reason and communicates something about that figure or that drapery or whatever it might be. So boy, it takes a lot of skill and a lot of mastery to be able to communicate things with only the lines that you want. I think a lot of us, especially when we're first starting out, tend to overly work pieces and rely on maybe some fancier rendering to cover up maybe some drawing issues and insecurities we might have. So to see somebody draw something so simplistically and make it work, it just shows a level of sophistication and confidence in your drawing skills. And beyond the drawing skills, as you can see with some of the sequential work, Alex Toth was really great at storytelling. His visual storytelling was amazing. Oftentimes, I'll take a look at some Alex Toth comic work when I'm stuck in terms of like, how do I visually display this story that I'm working on. Alex Toth is one of those artists that I'll look at just for inspiration. Similar to his drawing style, the shots that he will use and the panels that he will include are only the ones that contribute to the story. So there's really no panel there that's just there to be a pretty picture. Every panel, just like his lines, kind of serves a purpose in moving the story along. His art and his drawing style is so good that it just so happens that all those panels turn into just pretty pictures. This is really cool. It's cool to see that old coloring style in comics as well. Sometimes some of the plates didn't line up, so it kind of goes over the line art. I think that's really great. Sometimes in our modern comics, they're just a little too perfect, and there's not enough personality, I think. In addition to his more traditional comic strip style, Alex Toth also worked in a variety of other styles too. He's got such a different approach depending on each story. And as you can see here, this is a much more humorous kind of cartoony style that he's working in. And I really love it. There's like an immediacy to his lines. It just kind of feels like, I don't know, he makes it look effortless in many ways. like every line is just supposed to be there. Really great stuff. And I love like these tighter compositions, his use of silhouette, his use of sound effects, his hand lettering. You'll see in one of the other books we'll look through, his lettering is just just as much a part of his style as his drawings are. And then here we go, we jump into something else that is a little bit more rendered with what looks kind of like a marker rendering, but still working in that looser, more cartoony style. It seems like Alex Toth did work for a lot of different publications over the years. He did work for Marvel and DC, but he also did work for a lot of independent publishers, and he even did like some corporate advertising comics. There's a point where, and it might even be this image right here, where he was doing a series of comics based on Hot Wheels, the toys. And, you know, offhand, that could sound like a pretty corny kind of job, but some of those comics are just so incredibly done that he brought like a sense of artistry even to some of the most like commercial jobs. Look at this stuff here. His just his character design and interpretation of like the fashion of that time, he captures it so well. You know, he started working in the 50s, might have even been the late 40s, but I'm pretty sure it was the 50s, and was creating work all the way through the 90s. And the work, in many ways, it just keeps evolving. You know, it doesn't seem as though he ever was satisfied or just kind of fell into a specific way of doing things. There was a level of evolution that kept happening with his art, and it seems like he was always, you know, willing to learn, get better, and evolve. And you'll see like some of his later work in the 80s and 90s. It was almost as if he was getting really, really close to like the pinnacle of that simplification of only using the lines that really mattered the most. So there was a real nice quality to some of that really late stuff. This is so cool. I love seeing like the unfinished work too, because you could kind of see like the skeleton underneath. And it's always great to see how tight or how loose certain artists pencil underneath their inks. And an artist like Alex Toth really he needed just enough in the pencils. You know, sometimes you see artists who pencil so tight that they don't leave much else to do when it comes to the ink. But this is really inspiring to look at, because you see all the form, all the gesture, all the important information is there. And then he goes in with the ink and just brings the whole thing to life. There's really no need to do that with the pencil. That's so great to see. Like, books like this are so great because you really get an insight into the process. And this is an artist who existed long before social media and YouTube and blogs. So this is a really great way to kind of like deconstruct and study an artist like this. So wonderful. A lot of this like almost silent storytelling over here, with no dialogue and you don't even see like the face of this character. Everything is mainly in silhouette, but the shots that he chooses are so great. It's just, you could feel this character moving through this environment. So great. So much emotion just in a shot like that. I was flipping through this book earlier, and this is one of the stories that really caught my eye, because without even reading the text, like, the storytelling is just, it's all there. So great, so dramatic. Look at that ending right there. So awesome. I could go through this book forever, but there are a couple other books of his. Oh, here's that Hot Wheels stuff that I was talking about. And you get to see some of the original cover here where they would paste up the logo. I love this stuff because nowadays all this stuff is just done with Photoshop, but you could see just how tactile this stuff was at one point. Like there's someone literally like pasting these covers together. So awesome. And really the artwork, there was only this small amount of real estate on the cover to create like a dynamic piece of art, because so much of the cover was the design over here. And to me, if I just had that blank template to work off of, that would be really tough to figure out how do I make essentially this large panel into something interesting enough to turn into a cover. And it's really cool to see how he did this. And if you draw comics or you're into drawing and illustration in any way, you know that cars are just really difficult to draw as background elements, let alone like the star of the show. So this whole book, you know, cars were just as much of the character as any of the other characters. And he never made them feel like static or overly mechanical or even overly referenced. It just felt like he was drawing a person. There was a lot of just understanding of that shape, that he could draw from so many different angles, in so many different ways of lighting, the same way he would work on a human character, and it gives it that kind of that life. But some of these Hot Wheels strips are just so great. I mean, on this page alone, this book's so big it's hard to get it into frame, but there's 2, 4, 6, 8 panels on this page, which can, you know, could become a really crowded page. And there is a lot going on this page, but each panel is like its own really nicely done illustration. You could kind of like isolate any one of these and just kind of appreciate it as its own illustration. And, you know, this was in the era where the lettering was done right on the board, too. So, you know, when I'm laying out comics myself, I always, you know, take into account that there's going to be lettering, and I save room for it. But this is, like, done on a whole other level. You know, this is really the word bubbles, the letters, the dialogue boxes are literally just as much of a character as any other character in the panel. And I don't know if he did on this one, but oftentimes he would letter his own stuff, and his lettering was great. Cool. I'll do one more page of this story, and then we'll crack into one of the other books. So awesome. Just the use of black here. Like there's, you know, you only need a certain amount of lines before things fade into solid black here, but you still identify the same character as that character and that character. It's really hard to do. All right, cool. Like I said, we could do a whole video just on that book alone. It could be like an hour long, but I'm going to move into... This is a collection of Alex's, I guess, doodles and sketches and postcards to a particular friend of his. I don't really know the backstory too much, just because I always just breeze through this one and look at some of the amazing art. And, like, you know, these are supposed to just be like sketches and doodles, and there's such like a mastery even to these. And you'll see in let me get to it, yeah. And a lot of this, his lettering, he'll be writing letters, and the letters that he writes, it looks like a perfect font. It looks like a perfect comic book font. that someone would create. And that was just his handwriting. It was almost like the language of comics, the aesthetic, the style was just in every mark that he made, even his handwriting. This is a look at some of his character design work. Like I mentioned earlier, he did a lot of stuff for Hanna-Barbera. A lot of the character designs that he did were actually, you know, when you see this stuff now, the characters designs themselves were so much nicer than the actual animated cartoons, just because at the time animation didn't have the same capabilities that it had today to interpret these kinds of drawings and do them any justice. But these character designs over the years have become like works of art within themselves. Here's some more of that great visual storytelling. I'm going to take like big flips just so that we don't miss too much here. Look at these faces. This is just a lot of like really great automatic drawing. It feels like this is a glimpse into just his mind and the way he would practice. From what I've read, you know, he's one of these artists that was always sketching, even when he wasn't working on an actual job. He would just have a sketchbook with him and he'd be just drawing. It seems like that's an indication, a lot like an artist nowadays, like Kim Jong-gi, right? It seems like that's the indication of someone who's just so incredibly committed to what they do, that it's almost like they have to draw in order to think, in a way. So looking at their drawing it's like looking at their thoughts and their way of thinking. And if you just draw that much, I mean, you're bound to get really good at what you do. I mean, look at this. You're just always kind of noodling and, you know, sharpening your skills. And again, this is long before YouTube and Instagram. So it's a great collection of some of this like behind the scenes work. Again, it's that like minimal use of lines. No real need to put down a million lines if you really understand the form and you know, the things that you're trying to communicate with your drawing. So great. Movement, drapery. When I'm drawing in my sketchbook, I'm often like inspired by this kind of stuff. You know, this, to me, it feels like, you know, Alex Toth wasn't necessarily concerned with making these into finished pieces that he was going to show people or, you know, post online or anything like that. This was just drawing for him to either have fun or to study or to pass the time or whatever it might be. And that's when you really get a true sense, I think, of like the artist and the artist's mind, is when they're not doing this for anything. You know, it's not there just to show off. This is really just them in the gym in a way. And I've done, you know, videos in the past on sketchbooks and how it's good not to, you know, make them into these overly precious kind of objects. Just draw to learn, draw to have fun, draw to pass the time, to sharpen your skills, to organize your thoughts, whatever it might be. And, you know, pretend no one's ever going to see them. And I think that's a good approach to like sketching and sketchbooks and learning. Look at this lettering. I envy that just because my lettering it's atrocious and sometimes not even legible. So cool. Anyway, I don't know if this book is still available anywhere. I mean, it might be on Amazon or eBay or something, but if you get your hands on it, this is a really great one to flip through. Smaller than the other hardcover we looked at. But yeah, like I said, we could do a whole video just on this one alone. Look at that Superman, so cool. So great. It's like such a you know, I don't know the word, like a non-commercial version of Superman, but there's something like so like raw and honest about it too. So cool. Anyway, there's one more book of his that I'd love to go through, and this is a collection of his Bravo for Adventure series. I don't know too much about the story of this, but I have seen these strips over the years, either online or collected in various books. And yes, I mean, some of the work is great. Similar to how he would draw some of the cars in the Hot Wheels series. He did the same with planes. I mean, you know, think about cars, planes. These are things that are so hard to draw, but he would give them so much personality. And they never felt like stiff or, I guess, like I said before, like overly referenced. You know, a lot of times when I'm drawing like objects, for instance, like a motorcycle or a car or a plane, I have so little experience with those things in my real life that I have to reference them in order to understand them. And as an artist, it's hard to kind of walk that line between referencing something and drawing it as if you know it, so that it has kind of life to it. And this stuff is really admirable because, again, there's not a lot of lines going into that, but that plane and the shot of that plane has so much personality. It's great, and this stuff works so well for like an adventure story because there's so much movement, so much action. Look at that shot right there. Earlier this year, or it might have been last year, I came across an artist edition of this series, and so it was, you know, the full-size artboard. The book was the size of the full artboard, and they were just photographs of the actual pages. And it was so incredible, but for whatever reason, I didn't pick it up, and I kind of regret that to this day because it was such an awesome book. I took pictures and I took some video of it, but I kind of wish I just bought it. The cool thing about this book, though, is, and I'll kind of skip to it right now, is that it's got some process stuff in the back. And the reason why I feel like these books are worth it oftentimes is for this stuff right here. Just getting to see all the, you know, skeleton behind everything, how this stuff came to be. And an artist like Alex Toth, with the level of skill and confidence that he had with his work, I feel as though he wouldn't do too much more to this piece before inking it. Because everything is kind of there, and then he's ready to just go in with his brush or pen or whatever it might be and just bring that thing to life. This is really great to see, like a full page actually penciled with the lettering in there too. Like, look at how much the lettering is just a part of it. It's just like a character. So cool. The sense of design too, just like the logo placement at the end, where the letters are going, the bubbles themselves. There's like a very unmechanical, very organic, natural feel to that stuff, and I love that in comics. Sometimes when things are overly designed, as if it's like laid out in InDesign or something like that, kind of deadens the work a little bit. This is all just like figured out and designed right on the board, and it really gives that sense of life to it. I think this was some of the, if I'm not mistaken, these were some of his own color comps that he did for the colorist or for the separator. That's really cool. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of this. I don't want this video to go too long just because we are going through 3 different books, but just wanted to give you a little bit of a a glimpse into these books. If you're already a fan of Alex Toth's work, or if this is the first time you're seeing his work, hopefully this was somewhat interesting and eye-opening. And if you're interested in any of these books, I encourage you to check them out online. I'm sure some of these are still available somewhere on eBay or Amazon, or maybe even in your local shop. So thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions about Alex Toth's work, definitely comment down below. If you're a fan and have some of your favorite Alex Toth comics or strips out there, let me know as well. Or if there's any other books out there that I might not know about, I'd love to hear it. So cool. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.